Hey there, my friends. This is Bill MacDonald, the reading and writing doctor for teachers across Texas, the United States, and around the world. This video is specifically for teachers who have kids who are struggling with the concept of reading at the passage level or the paragraph level. And I don't know about other states, but Texas is entering a new chapter where the students are going to, for the first time this year in May, from 3rd through 8th grade and ELAR reading, they're going to be exposed to up to 6 editing questions in 2 passages. Sorry, 6 editing questions in 1 passage and 6 editing passages, 3 in each of 2 passages according to the test design schematic. And my suggestion for this video is going to be threefold. It's going to be for teachers who are taking in Texas that field test of open-ended, because there will be some editing and revising questions in there. I am pretty sure of it. In the reading, it's going to be open-ended, but of different types and formats. So how am I going to be able to do editing and revising in an open-ended format if I can't even do it with multiple choices where the answers are staring me right in the face? The second portion is for teachers in Texas and around the world who might be just be receiving editing and revising as field tested items, which means, for those of you who are not aware, they're inside the real test, but they will not count for or against your students. The state that you're in will just use them as data to analyze the strengths and weaknesses at each grade level. And so, for example, in Texas, all 3rd through 8th grade students in each classroom per se are going to be exposed to, as I mentioned, a passage that has 6 editing questions or 2 passages that have 3 revising questions each. Now, the good thing is this year, not everybody's going to get all those. So a lot of people say, well, should I even worry about it? Well, if you put the cart before the horse, in other words, if you focus on nothing but open-ended, constructed type responses this year, when that's not even going to be on 1 question in May in any test and in any grade level, that cart is not going to go anywhere because a horse has no idea how to pull that cart. That's going to happen next year. But if you have the horse in the front and you focus as a reading teacher on 90% on reading concepts and skills, hopefully somewhere in that cart, because it will be in the cart called the reading test for 3rd through 8th grade. And of course, there'll be 9 questions of editing for every 9th grade student and 9 revising questions for every 9th and 10th grade student. It's going to be important that that be something that you put in the cart. But here's the problem. You're taking this horse and cart on a journey to whatever your state test is called. Well, because questions in editing are always at the sentence level, they never ask an editing question about an entire paragraph or an entire passage. I'm going to say this with your cart and your horse: stop trying to climb a mountain when you only need to go over an overpass. Don't focus on editing in the context of huge passages, because the state samples are even this year giving them in short paragraphs, sometimes just a couple short passages, sometimes just a couple of paragraphs. And so I'm going to show you today, using my binder, how to make sure that you're just going over an overpass, at least for this year. And for those of you that are in other states, it'll be great practice to learn about editing. I call editing and revising the emergency room of writing. Editing, well, I'll use this hand, editing is the conventions, the grammar, what some of you call the cups with one S, that should be cups with two S's. Capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and the second S that I'll show you in my folder in a few moments is sentence boundaries. You have to help your students understand the difference between a run-on, where there's too many words without slowing down or stopping at a stop sign called a period, exclamation, or question mark, or a fragment where you give the reader whiplash because you're stopping too many times, putting stop signs right in the middle of a sentence. That would be like putting, since we mentioned, an overpass, that would be like putting a stop sign right on top of an overpass where there are not even stop lights on most freeways. It's just going on and on forever. And your kids will relate to that because that's how they write. They write as if they're on an overpass, never stopping for a period. So their paragraph or their page or their passage, their essay, whatever they're writing for you, is just one big run-on. So I'm going to show you a very simple way using the binder to help you just for now climb the overpass instead of the mountain. And I want to thank, over the last 18 years, I've sold 500,000 copies of my Dear Doc writing binder, which stands for Daily Editing and Revising of Doc Development, Organization, and Conventions. Now, because of the Texas transition to reading, it's called the Daily Editing, Essay, Extended, and Reading Revising Doc Development, Organization, Conventions. Basically, it's going to cover all of the English language arts concepts of reading and writing, editing, revising in both open-ended and multiple choice formats. So if you don't have the binder, go ahead and message me. I'll put it on sale for $5 just for this next week, for anybody who's trying to prepare their kids, who are realizing that your kids are struggling with reading and you want to make sure that they are able to handle the test in February, but more importantly, handle the test in May, because that will be 3rd through 8th grade. Now, I sold 500,000 copies of this binder, and that was when Texas was just doing writing in 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th. More of you need something because it's practical. A lot of it you have told me. And the only reason I'm putting this video out is because I've been getting a lot of emails and messages lately about how to go about approaching the editing and revising for this year with this year's horse and this year's cart. So I've gone ahead and printed 2 pages of the binder, just 2, so you can see how to go about attacking editing in a very practical, easy way with students who struggle with reading, so that you're not having to feel like they're going over mountains. So before I get into the one question that we're going to look at that's multiple choice and one in open-ended format, I want to show you the Elar Binder. Starting next year, this will have to be an important part of your teaching content, where editing is about conventions and grammar, cups with two S's. When the question says what change in Texas, what correction should be made, what change, what correction, well, it's usually going to always be cups, okay? 90% of the time, 99% of the time, it'll say what change should be made in sentence. And that would be cups, capitalization, usage, punctuation, or spelling, okay? Revision, for those of you that are not experienced, who are reading teachers, trying to transition over to understanding the difference between editing and revising. Revising is improving the content, something's development and organization by adding green, removing red, possibly replacing. So in order to replace something, you have to remove it first. So red out, green back in, and moving, changing the order of a word, a phrase, a transition, or a sentence when it comes to revising. Okay. And so there's a really cool root beer bottle called IBC, where you're taking something that has an introduction, a body, and a conclusion, and you're going to do arm, not arms, because in Texas, they never use the word substitute on the test. So it's probably important to get used to using arm. They basically use what could best replace, what substitute. So be cautious about using posters that have arms and cups with only one S. Just so you can see it, whenever it says what is the correct or best way to write a sentence, the correct or best way to write a sentence, it has to do with fragments and run-ons. So basically your students will be checking the question and the sentence that it asks about for run-ons, fragments, a comma conjunction problem, and in the answer choices, they'll find repetition, they'll find problems with the content, with the meaning, the wrong cause and effect relationship in the sentence boundary issue, or the wrong compare and contrast relationship. And so the second line is when you're kind of eliminating the wrong answers. And the first line is when you have a sentence boundary issue, it usually has to do with run-ons or fragments or comma and or conjunction problems. So be careful that you don't use the word story when you're looking at a passage if it's not a story. If it's a poem, if it's a play, if it's an informative passage, if it's a persuasive passage, make sure you use passage or selection unless you're sure it's a story. And I'm only saying that because I'm hearing so many teachers use the word story when they're looking at a passage that has nothing to do with the story whatsoever. So let's take a look. I'm only going to look, and if you want to look at, it's page 189 of the binder. For those of you that have the digital copy, for many of you that have the hard copy, I made 10 different tests from page 189 all the way to page 230 for those of you who just want to practice editing at the sentence level, because that's the way the questions are going to be asked. They're just going to take 6 questions inside a little mini passage, and they'll be asking questions only about 6 sentences from that passage. So I have my acronym rules. For those of you that are not familiar, it's read the question. And the question's at the top of all these little practice tests. There's 10 little practice tests. So you can practice mixed editing, but have one mistake like there's going to be on the field test this year and next year on the regular test on the multiple choice. What change, if any, should be made in sentence 2? Okay, so I've read the question, and then when you're reading, you want to underline and label anything that's important. Change is important, and I told you on the folder that change is always going to mean cups, that there's going to be a capitalization, usage, subject verb agreement problem, punctuation or spelling issue. And so I've labeled cups to make sure that I only am thinking about those kinds of errors. So then we have to read the sentence and underline and label anything in the sentence that we think is important. Now, many kids are visual, verbal, auditory, or kinesthetic. So it's important that if you're just giving worksheets, that you add what I call the VAC learning style. And VAC, I'm going to be jokingly say, comes from the word vacuum. You vacuum the floor, the lowest level in your classroom, if it has carpet, is the floor. And the VAC level, the kids who are at the lowest level, need you to teach what I call the VAC way. Are you making it visual enough, verbal enough, auditory where they're hearing and listening, kinesthetic where they're doing something? So I'm going to try to do that for those of you that are trying to prepare yourselves. If you want to, I circled the comma in yellow to slow the sentence down like a sign, and the punctuation, the ending stop sign, red. Why did I do that? Because in my folder, for those of you that have it, the punctuation marks, I'll zoom in here a little bit bigger for you guys. The punctuation, whenever you have a period, an exclamation, or question mark, it's like a stop sign that you would have red. So I highly suggest if you have kids do journaling or portfolios, have them draw one page each with a huge period, comma, exclamation, comma, and question mark that are red so that you can practice statements, commands, emotional statements that I call exclamation, and question marks that look like ears where somebody's asking something with little dots where they're waiting for a response. When you slow the sentence down, use a comma and apostrophe. What's the difference? Commas come on down and apostrophes are up in the air. For higher grades, you have to make sure you'll say, oh, there was an independent clause, and we're going to slow the sentence down to put a colon. And I know this is kind of corny, but I sometimes work with difficult kids who don't care, and I want to capture their attention. Well, ask them, why do you think God put your colon in the middle of your body? Well, because there was going to be a writing teacher that says there's going to be a colon in the middle of the sentence that says, hey, here's an independent clause followed by a colon, and then there's going to be some sort of list. The simplest colon you can talk about is time. 8 could be the hour, colon, a complete hour, colon, part of the hour would be however many minutes for that next hour have passed. 8:15, 8 colon, and 15 minutes of the next hour. A semicolon says, hey, I've got another independent clause, but I'm going to follow it with a semicolon, which will be another independent clause that says, let's give you more information about that first sentence, but not use what many of you call a comma and a fanboys to connect to compound sentences. We're going to connect two independent clauses with a semicolon, and the second sentence won't have a capital. And then there's sometimes going to be dialogue in punctuation. So and so said, comma, quotation, capital, three c's that happen in a row right when you have dialogue. I'm saying this because we're going to see one in a minute. Then whatever they say, whatever comes out of their mouth, literally, closing the stop sign, period, exclamation or question mark, and quotation, because you're done talking. So if you look at it closely, it sort of looks like when many people talk, you can see that before their mouth and after their mouth, they have little dimples. And so look for the students in your classroom who have the hugest dimples. So you can say, all right, look at Billy MacDonald over there. He's got his opening quotation marks, his opening dimples, whatever he said, whatever came out of his mouth, and his closing quotation marks, his closing dimples. And that's one way to look at dialogue, thinking of the quotation marks as opening and closing dimples, and the five c's, comma, quotation, capital, the first thing that you write, the first word needs to start with a capital. What you say, what comes out of your mouth, closing, and quotation. All right, so that's punctuation because that's all that today's lesson is going to be about. So let's take a look and read it out loud. And there's two ways you can read so that you can get ready to test solo. Right now, we're going to read LO loudly because we'll be reading as a class, or we might try it first in groups. When the kids get better at the concepts and skills that you're teaching, they can do it so softly. They can whisper, either with whisper phones, which are illegal in Texas on all reading tests, or they can cover one ear or both ears and whisper. And a lot of kids don't like to open their mouth. That means that silence is deadly in a classroom of auditory learners. What I'm saying by that is, if your kids are auditory learners and you're letting them get away with reading silently where they never open their mouth, their test score is going to suffer unless you make them do more visual, more kinesthetic activities. So I'm going to kill several birds with one stone here as I'm reading, underlining, and labeling. Capital. When I wear a cap, it makes me look taller. This W is taller because it's the first word in a sentence. Whenever you're mad about something, okay? Whenever you're mad about something, let's make sure we do a teachable moment of instruction, a TMI, and say, oh, there's an example of a dependent clause. This dependent clause is dependent on this independent clause, and it will be separated by a comma. How do you know it's a dependent clause? Well, it has to have a subject and a predicate. You would be the subject. Mad, you're mad, would be the predicate. You are mad is what's happening. Comma. So I'll bounce my imaginary ball on the table, a shorter bounce for a shorter pause. Just take a deep breath in and out. Okay? In and out. And a lot of times your kids have to make sure they understand that if you're only talking about two things in an in versus out, We don't need to put a comma. We're just joining two different ideas together with a conjunction, period. All right, let's take a look at F. Change your, something you own, to your. I tossed my ball up in the air because that's where the imaginary ball would be. So I'm going to remember to slow down whenever, let's try it. And we labeled P for punctuation. Whenever your, once you toss the ball, make sure your kids separate. You are, whenever you are mad about something, comma, just take a deep breath in and out, period. That's great for practicing grammar, but it's great for practicing stress too, how to deal with stress. Just take a deep breath. Don't let things affect you, don't let things ruin your day. Don't let anyone or anything steal your joy. Another teachable moment of instruction has nothing to do with grammar. I like how that sounded. I'm going to put a little question mark right there because you are does make sense. I can't own a mad because your house, our house, I can't own a mad, but I can be mad. So since that wouldn't work, I'm going to probably say that F is going to make the most sense so far. Why? Because it's the only one I've read. Letter G, change deep, D, E, E, P to deep, D, E, A, P. So your kids have had to have seen deep with the double E enough times. If they take a picture, too many times they're taking a picture of the entire word when they should be taking a picture of that double vowel deep, because if they haven't seen it enough, they will be tricked into picking deep because they have seen words like cheap. Now, what you need to do then is do an extension if a lot of kids pick that one and say, let me give you a non-example, sleep, okay? Sleep is just like deep. Sleep is correct, and so is deep. So you would not want to take a deep breath with an EAP like you wouldn't want something to be cheap as in EE. And so the trick with spelling sometimes is having your kids who struggle with spelling, they might not even necessarily be uh, um, dyslexic or anything. It just might be that they're not actually taking pictures at the letter level. And in this case, you could remind them that that D has a stick that's to the right hand side. The P has a stick to the left hand side. So real quick, B's and D's. Some kids are very bad. B, A, D at B and D. So remind them that when B and D are in alphabetical order, the sticks are on the outside, the circles are on the inside. Elemento P, Q. The sticks are still on the outside. I can't get my hands up high enough right there. The circles are still on the inside. They're still in alphabetical order, P and Q. So the idea on spelling is have your kids take pictures at the letter level if they struggle with spelling, not one picture of the entire word. And you can do that with a jump rope. D, E, E, P. With a hula hoop. D, E, E, P. With a little thing you place around your ankle, the uh, the lemon or can't remember what it's called. Maybe you can help me in the comment section. D, E, E, P. And you basically have a fun time practicing spelling. I used to have a number line in my classroom right in the middle, a trash can, and a little cheap basketball. And they would stand on the 1, D. If they make it, they get to go to the next letter. E on 2, next letter, E, standing on 3, P, standing on 4. And if they make it through the whole word, and I would only let maybe one person per team do that activity with the jump rope, the hula hoop, the skip it, lemonade, or the basketball. And we could have a point system if we're practicing spelling where they get to take a little brain break and play a game as a reward for getting the correct answer. All right. So I think that it just doesn't seem to make sense because my brain hasn't taken a picture of deep with EA, but I have seen deep with EE. And so do extensions extra time on ones that are distractors that hurt your kids. H, change the period to a question mark. Okay, now I'm going to tell you that because the word whenever starts with this part of the word when, it's possible that your kids will think, oh, who, what, when, where, why, those are all questions. But whenever doesn't usually start a question. It's giving you a time frame. Whenever you're mad about something, at those moments when you're upset, frustrated, agitated, irritated. So take a deep breath in and out. So that since they're giving you a suggestion, it could be that they're giving a command. They're giving a command in a nice way called this, like, hey, just take a deep breath in and out. So I don't think I would be putting a question mark because I'm not asking a question. I'm making a statement or a command called a suggestion. So we're going to eliminate letter H. Then we'll check J, and whenever both words are correct, take and took, the way it is in the sentence and the way they want you to change it, that's usually usage. You're basically saying, how is it being used? Well, take, when you take something, I pointed down because that's present tense, and they're asking you to change it to took in past tense. So the best way to try it is to remove take, put in a J up, oh, sorry, put in the right spot, put a J above take, and I'm going to place a took so I can try it. Capital, whenever you are mad about something, comma, just took, and I'm going to put my hand behind me. So you can train your kids' brains into thinking, okay, present tense, point down. And I'm only asking you to do one thing, take a deep breath. So if I say, take a deep breath and close your eyes. Since that's two things, I would put two hands down, a compound predicate. But since I'm just doing one thing, just take a deep breath. Present tense. If I switch it to past tense, capital, whenever you are, because I already know that's the right answer, mad about something, comma, just took a deep breath in and out, took my hand behind me. Says that doesn't make sense. Whenever you're mad, they're basically if you're mad right now, if you happen to be mad in the future, then go ahead and take a deep breath. So this is nothing about anything that happened in the past. So I'm going to eliminate that. So how many have eliminated? 3. Letters J, H, and G. Why am I taking such a long time? Because the majority of you are reading teachers who are trying to get some nuggets of wisdom or strategies. And if I try to go 100 miles an hour, as if I'm talking to 4th, 7th, 9th, and 10th grade writing teachers, which have been working on editing and revising for the last 20 years, 30 years, if you've been teaching as long as me, then it's really going to throw you off. And I don't want to do that. So I'd rather take my time and give you quality with just one question instead of quantity, instead of trying to do this whole page. Because if I can teach my kids how to do something as a class with this one, then the next time they might try to do it in a group. And it might take 5 or 10 questions as a group to practice until you see that they're getting skillful at it. Then you can get to the partner level and then finally to the solo level. And still you're not trying to climb a mountain, you're just going over the overpass. So the one that we thought was the best was letter F. I'm going to fill it in, place a little F beside it. That's just to practice the bubbling because a lot of you are still taking the test on paper and pencil. You can also do a submission on your computer, that's fine. But if it allows you to annotate, go ahead and have them place a 2 and an F side by side in the booklet so that when they go to the test, it'll be 2F. Now, just as a reminder, since many of you are telling me that the online test is only A, B, C, D for all the odds, and again, A, B, C, D for all the even, you would make sure that your kids would write, you could write next to it, write A, B, C, D. If you're 100% sure that you're going online, you can say, oh, the first choice will always be A for you guys, but the first choice for all even numbers on paper pencil tests will be F. Okay, so I've selected it in the book, and then of course I'm either going to select it in the Scantron or I'm going to submit it into my computer response. So what if you say, oh, I'm frustrated. My kids did not do very well on that when they had a lot of trouble. Well, pages 162 to 172, because this was a punctuation question, are nothing but chances to practice punctuation. And so I chose an open-ended because for those of you that will get the field test next month, it's possible that you might get some open-ended editing questions to see how your kids handle it. And one of the things that we're being told, if you look right here, number 6 on my constructive responses that many of you in Texas are already taking and outside of Texas have been taking forever. I met a teacher from Kansas who they've been doing online forever. And I don't know if that's just their district or if that's the whole state or what, but for us here in Texas, more than one correct answer to a question. So I'm going to be able to practice punctuation still, but I'm going to be able to practice, oh, this section, this open-ended punctuation section is always going to have more than one mistake, just so you can practice. And again, do I need to do the entire page? No. I might put C so that my kids know I'm going to be doing this one just as a class. And this is, for those of you that have the binder, page 162. All right. So I have my yellow and my red ready because punctuation has to do with slowing the sentence down or stopping it. I see a comma, yellow. Quotation, yellow. Exclamation, red. Okay. Now, you can either have them write the entire sentence if you want, or if you're trying to not focus on even climbing the overpass, if you just need to move forward, then you might say on the line, just write the mistakes that you see. Correct them, edit them on the line, leave everything else alone. So let's read this sentence verbally so that we can hear it auditorily and be actually listening. We're going to say every word, and we're even going to say the punctuation marks out loud so you can practice understanding what their names are. And we'll practice kinesthetically, where we will put on a cap for capitalization. We'll bounce on the table here for commas, toss the ball up in the air for apostrophe, and toss an imaginary ball on the floor for stop signs. Okay, so here we go. Number one from page 162. Capital. My mom said, and we learned this in our little mini lesson with my folder, comma, quotation, my opening dimples, capital, your. Now, this one has your the correct way, but they left out the punctuation mark. And so I'm going to, with my pencil, draw a contraction, and then I'm going to circle it yellow. And the reason I did that is because some kids will say, oh, I'm going to check it when I finish. No, sometimes if your kids are going to do their editing at the end of everything, they'll never get back to it, or they're going to forget about it. So I highly suggest that right away, since you already know there's one mistake, because it was the first word in a direct quotation, make sure that you teach your kids to put a capital Y where the entire Y is above the line. This is wrong because the reader is not going to know whether this student has a capitalization problem or a penmanship problem. So capital Y, everything's above the line. You is there. Your, we contract the A. Your, okay. Again, we'll go ahead and circle it. My mom said, comma, quotation, capital, your, you are running the right speed. Okay. And in case you're wondering, I went through hundreds and hundreds of student essays for elementary and secondary, looked for mistakes that I found. Instead of reinventing the wheel, I said, you know what? Let me not make up mistakes. I spent the majority of the time just looking for papers that already had punctuation mistakes and saved you the effort by putting the mistakes right there. And so this is student writing where they made mistakes. And so we're going to be able to help them with the conventions by helping other people first. And, oh, there's an and, so I'm going to check. Is there an independent clause in front of this? You're running the right speed. If I can say that and it stands alone and it makes sense, then yes, I would put a comma and I'm going to circle it yellow, because if you look at the second part, I was very happy to hear that, because that first part is an independent clause that makes sense by itself. And the second part, I was very happy to hear that makes sense by itself. That's called a compound sentence, where coordinating conjunction, where you use a comma with one of the fanboys, in this case, the word and. And so the way you can save time, let's write the word before, speed, put the comma, and the word and. That way, instead of rewriting the entire sentence, your students are just writing the first word, the conjunction of the second independent clause, and the last word of the first independent clause. And I was very happy to hear that exclamation. Okay. Now, a lot of kids would try to put a period there. Oh, it just says sad. Well, because of the word happy, since it has to do with my emotions, the author's license is, if I'm very happy to hear something, I might be emotionally involved in it. So I would say, is that exclamation okay? Yes, because someone was happy to hear something. And, I'm not going to be happy about somebody running the right speed, but apparently this mom running, seeing her child, boy or girl, running physically at the speed that apparently was correct, made her happy, then we would need an emotion. Now, a lot of students are going to just be done. But you got to remember, I'm going to draw it for you. If you have a place where somebody said something, I highly suggest that you teach dialogue, where you say, okay, there's the opening quotation marks, which we'll call the opening dimples, and I put 2, but we haven't closed them out yet. We haven't closed the dimples. So that means a lot of students are going to forget to do what even a lot of adults forget to do, is even though the sentence is done, we say, oh, are we saying exclamation in an excited way? No, we're saying I was very happy to hear that in an excited way. So the exclamation goes on the inside. If you put the exclamation on the outside, that means that all you're saying in an excited way is quotation. And that never comes out of my mouth. And so that's one way to help your kids put your punctuation mark inside the quotation mark in this case. And so to remind your kids, I've got to make sure I close that, and I'll color that in yellow. And I'll remind myself that I did that there. And so what will that look like? We'll go ahead and write the word that, the last word, an exclamation, because it's what we're saying with emotion that's important to us. And finally, the quotation mark I'll build the circle version. I put the quotation. There you go. So there you have it. It had a repeat of the your, but done a little bit differently because the other your was your versus our, and this your, it was written correctly, but they left out the contraction. So it could be shown to your students either way. And so we fixed 3 mistakes in the sentence, I believe. Let me just double check. 1, yes. 2, and 3. And we didn't need an entire novel, an entire paragraph, or an entire passage to do it. I was able to cover a lot of ground just with 2 sentences today. And so I'm going to say this one more time because so many people are asking me, how do I work on editing and revising for January through May? Focus on climbing the overpass, not the entire mountain. Please, I beg of you, because part of many of your students' tests next month will be open-ended editing in as part of the reading test, then work on that open-ended section that I just showed you. Because part of your May test in 3rd through 8th grade and all 9th and 10th grade English and end of course students will be having 9 editing and 9 revising. Make sure you practice at least at the overpass level. Practice editing at the sentence level, not necessarily at the paragraph or passage, because I can promise you that the most sentences your students will have to read when it comes to editing will usually be 2 or 3. Where are those? When it has to do with run-ons and fragments, or when you're checking the usage in order to find out if something is present, past, or future. You sometimes have to check the previous sentence. Is it past, present, or future? Is it singular or plural? Because if they're asking you in this sentence about a singular or plural question, or a past, present, or future question, you have to check the previous sentence and or the following sentence to be able to know which is the correct usage. And so sometimes you just can't check that sentence, but at most, if you're trying to climb overpasses and not mountains, just have them for usage questions. Check the sentence that's being asked about, the sentence before, and the sentence afterwards. So do me a favor, click like on my YouTube video, click like on the Facebook. If you have a reading teacher who is struggling because they're trying to climb mountains with their students, share it with that reading teacher. And do me a favor, I have a special prize for anybody who takes the time, especially who took the time to watch this video that's long. I haven't written in a while. I was going through a certain chapter of my life where, and I'm going to be writing a book on it. My journey to and through the valley of the shadow of death. Many of you have experienced some dark chapters, and I apologize that I haven't been on for a while helping you with reading and writing and math and motivation, but I feel like God was taking me through a special place, and I spent a lot of times in Psalms 23 trying to understand the sequence of it, why David wrote it, and it really helped me get through my valley of the shadow of death. And so I appreciate your patience. For those of you that have been asking me why I haven't been posting, I just feel like I needed to do a reconnect. It was like my plug had become disconnected from God. And when that happens, your plug becomes disconnected in a lot of your other areas of life as well. So I hope that you'll be encouraged. Uh, don't try to take too big of a bite when it comes to the editing. I'll do some revising as well, but uh, I'll focus right now a little bit on just climbing the overpass of editing for cups with two S's. For those of you that are trying to help their kids over these next couple of months, and I'm just going to beg you, please don't completely ignore the editing and revising. It will be in multiple choice in May. It will be probably on at least half of your kids' tests as field test items. No, they won't count, but please don't take it out of your cart just because they don't count for next year. Because if you wait until next year to start working on editing and revising, you're going to have a mountain, and it'll be a lot steeper to climb if you wait until next year to start working on it. So work on the overpasses for now. Practice things at the sentence level. Please feel free to message me if you need any advice or encouragement on any area. I had a teacher asking me today about, are there going to be any open-ended? Yes, next month. For all of you, no, just for some of you districts. Are the multiple choice editing and revising tests in May going to count? No, they will not count for or against. Should I ignore it? No, I said, please put that in your cart and move your horse forward, knowing that you're doing right by your kids by exposing them to editing of by improving content, revising by improving uh, organization and conventions, the editing and improving the conventions, and revising by improving the content, the organization, and the development. So, like I said, please do me a favor and share or tag one of your reading teacher friends. I'm spending more time on this video than I normally would at the end because I haven't seen so many of you in so long. I just want to say that I hope that you had a happy new year, a wonderful Christmas with friends and family, that you were blessed, that you were refreshed, that you were renewed, that your energy was restored. I'm also a pastor, so if you need any encouragement or insight on how to get your joy back, be sure to join my group that's called Praising You in the Mountains and Trusting You in the Valleys. And so I'll be sharing some videos from my book, My Journey to and Through the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And hopefully, you know, that'll help some of you, because I'm realizing more and more these days that a lot of times it's not about content or curriculum. It's just about hundreds, if not thousands, of teachers losing their joy because of circumstances, because of other people. And I just want you to know that I'm here for you. I'm willing to do videos of any type for editing, for revising, for reading, for motivation, for spiritual encouragement. I don't claim to know everything. I heard somebody say one time, the more I learn, the more I realize I know absolutely nothing at all. And I think if we all just keep a humble attitude and an open heart and mind through this difficult chapter of COVID that we're in, we'll get through it. And let me encourage you, don't go it alone. Surround yourself with friends, get in a group of teachers like this, get a close group that can be there to help you with those tough times, to build you up, to lift you up, to help you say, I can get on my cart and pull my horse for today because of the words that somebody told me. Don't worry about next week or next month, just worry about today. What can you do to get you through today to tomorrow without giving up, without walking away, without becoming discouraged or disillusioned? Because I'm sensing that in a very big way. And I want to make sure that I can do everything in my power to build you up and help you walk in wholeness and happiness and just full of joy, and that you enjoy who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. So thank you guys. God bless. And take care.